How do you talk to somebody, especially when you're experiencing intense emotions, anger, sadness, disappointment? It's really hard to talk to somebody. I didn't have a way to articulate what it is I was feeling. I just know this happened. It makes me feel bad here in my chest. I have a higher appreciation for you that would not exist if I wasn't a counselor working with adults.
Welcome to Pendant Ink., a podcast where we discuss marriage and the power of long-lasting love. Today, we're going to focus on Melissa's profession. We're going to discuss her insights into the human condition and how those are continually shaping her view on relationships. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm Michael. This is my wife, Melissa. We've been married 30 years, and on this podcast, we discuss the power of marriage and relationships.
There you go.
How you doing today?
Great. And
Great.
you?
Good. You ready to talk all about yourself today?
Sure, why not?
Because you spend
good at it.
all day, every day talking about yourself. This should be right in your wheelhouse, yes?
No, I don't.
All right. So we're going to treat today a little bit like an interview, and we're going to discuss Melissa's profession, the clientele she works with, lessons she's learned in her, I don't know, we'll find out, 15, 20, 25, I dare not go higher, number of years of working in the profession. And so let's start off with the 30-second elevator pitch. What is your profession?
I am a licensed clinical mental health counselor in private practice. Started out 20 plus years ago working exclusively with children. I now work almost exclusively with adults and really love what I do. And so hopefully that comes through in our interview today.
Awesome. Let's start off with counseling is a highly variable field. There's lots of different types of counselors. What type of counselor are you?
Through training, mainly cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's talk therapy where I help people. They tell me about their feelings and their behaviors, and we talk about how those feelings affect their behaviors. And usually it's behaviors they don't want. And so they want to change those. But in order to change the behaviors, you also need to change the thinking around that. And that is one of the top three mental health counseling approaches. I found as my career has evolved over the last 20 years, I use a lot of humanistic counseling, which is I have a belief that the people that come to me, they have it in them, what they need to do in order to change. They have the self-worth. They're good people. They just maybe are misguided or weren't taught certain skills, but they have it within them to, with some guidance and assistance, and that's what I do, is to get where they want to be, which is usually, relatively healthy, however they define that. And it's a great job and I really enjoy it. These days, work with adults. Started off working with kids, loads of fun, but very tiring. So after about a decade, I went, okay, let's make a shift. And what's it like to work with adults? Very different and also similar. But loved both of them. Work with a lot of people. Where I kind of focus, the majority of my clients, mood disorders, depression, anxiety. I also have some neurodevelopmentally diverse clients. I have, multiple with ADHD, with autism spectrum disorder, along those lines. And it's people that come to me either weekly, bi-weekly, or once a month, or some people that just want to come for a tune-up a few times a year. And we talk about what's going on in their life. And with a little assistance and guidance, hopefully they go away from their sessions feeling better about themselves.
Nice. So you threw a bunch of psychological terms in the beginning there.
Oh.
But you defined most of them, which I appreciate because it's been a long time. So my minor is in psychology. So I understood most of the phrases you threw out there. So cognitive behavioral therapies, that's your primary. Explain what that is really quick to me.
Yes. Sometimes somebody will say, I don't know why.
That's the thought. Yep.
My husband said something and I just went off on him. And I don't know why that behavior happened. Why did that behavior happen?
Gotcha. Okay. So you help them process the thought process behind the behaviors. Okay, good. And then you mentioned humanistic. So what is humanistic again? Give me a definition of that again. You believe that people have the innate ability to correct whatever the situation is.
Yes. And that all people have self-worth. They don't always come to me with that. I have a question in my first session that I do, an assessment, and it is, what are you good at? What are your positive qualities? And we usually do that right after we've done, what are you struggling with? Why are you here? Because it's my way of pointing out, it's a strength-based model of you do have skills. And there are some people that look at me and say, I got nothing.
They don't know what their skills are to start with.
They don't. And so that's also, and so humanistic is that relationship you build.
So why did you choose this line of work? I mean, unlike my career, which we'll talk about in a future episode, you were very intentional with choosing this career path. And you've already said multiple times how much you enjoy it. But what drove you to this profession?
Well, you said intentional, and I've been thinking about that.
Ooh, was it not as intentional as I thought it was?
And I've told the majority of my clients this, so if they happen to find our podcast, they should not be surprised. And I usually tell them ahead of time, maybe you don't want to hear this, but there is an element that I kind of fell into it. I started my freshman year in college wanting to be a physician's assistant.
Oh, I remember
bio
this.
major.
Yeah, I remember this.
So and then in my second year after being a bio major, I took chemistry, and math is not my strongest suit. And I just didn't like it. And I knew I was going to have to take more advanced chemistry. And then it made me think, well, are there other things? I love anatomy and physiology. I really intrigued. I loved those classes. However, the rest of being a physician's assistant, other than helping people, didn't really fit in with my strengths and my desires.
Gotcha.
And so, to be honest, I went to my advisor at college and said, okay, I think I need to make a switch. This isn't working for me. What else do I have credits in? And she said, well, it looks like you've taken quite a few psychology courses. And I paused and went, I have, because I really like them. Bang. And there it was. So I switched. I ended up being a psychology major, did get the bio minor because I'd already taken enough classes. And then, do you need me to pause it all? Do you have any questions there? Because I'm going to launch into the next piece, which is...
Well, this is funny. I didn't realize that you have the psychology major and a bio minor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a BS in psychology.
That's the same degree I have. I didn't realize that we had to end up with the same degree.
We did.
Oh, interesting. I got to mine in a very similar path, but not the exact same path. But for some reason, I didn't realize your undergrad. I didn't realize you had the minor in bio.
I did. Yeah, I only needed to take one more course after I switched to psych. So I'm like, well, why not?
That's funny.
Yeah, that's too funny. You didn't know that.
We'll get into it in the episode we feature on my career. But I ended up with a minor in bio simply because I didn't want to write the thesis. So that's how I ended up with a psychology degree, because they said no thesis. I said sold. So anyway, all right, okay.
And so I get to what was going to be my last year, and I started thinking, what does one do with a bachelor's in psychology? So I started researching, and the answer is not a whole lot. Or there are things you can do, nothing that interested me. So I went back to my advisor. At that point, I'd been given a psychology. Allison Burns.
That's what I thought it was, yeah.
Yeah, Allison Burns. And I said, well, what? And she said, she reeled off a few things, and she hit counseling. I was like, oh. And so then I did a couple hours worth of research, and I was like, that's what I want to do, which means there's graduate school. So then after college, got my BS. Then I went on to graduate school and got a master's in counseling psychology with an emphasis in child and family, and loved grad school. Every class was about and I just knew I found it. And it was like this sense of relief. I know some people struggle to find what it is they want to do. And so just to know, and I knew like within minutes of starting grad school, great, I chose the right thing, and haven't looked back once.
Well, let's pivot to the work then. So that was how you found the passion, which is great because you alluded to this, but lots of people don't find the passion, or they come to a career because of other reasons, quality of doing it, necessity, all sorts of things. And we'll talk about in a future episode how I found my career. It was not a passion. It was a proficiency. I was really good at what I did. And so I built a career around being really good at something. whereas you've built yours about being passionate about it and really good. So that's a good combination. So let's talk about the work of it. And we often joke between us that there's a big gap in our levels of empathy.
Mm.
You truly have the ability to feel what your clients are going through, to experience it in a secondhand nature, and to really empathize with them. Me, not so much. That's not really in my wheelhouse as much. But we've had debates about this and how our daughters differ or are similar to you and I in this area. But let's talk a little bit about the process of being a counselor and how your ability to share the feelings, understand the feelings of others, how does that play a role in helping others? How does empathy play a role, and what's the counseling process look like?
Absolutely. You cannot have a good therapeutic relationship with somebody if you don't have rapport. And, not to toot my own horn, but I'm going to, which is I like talking to people and I'm animated and I really want to hear what they have to say. And they feel that. And I've had people say that even after first session, because I always give people the option at the end of a first session, hey, if you don't feel you mesh with me, because you really have to find the right counselor. If you didn't feel you meshed with me, maybe I sound like your Aunt Edna and you can't stand Aunt Edna, or for any other reason, I will not take offense. I'm a professional and I will help you find a new counselor. And toot my own horn, I have never had anybody. A couple clients haven't worked out after a few sessions. We decided that we weren't a good fit. But in general, people like working with me. And this is really hard for me to brag about myself, by the way.
It's good.
But I'm really good at rapport because I do. I listen well. I can understand. I can, even if I've never experienced what they do, I still feel it with them. I've cried in sessions before. I try not to do that too frequently because the sessions aren't about me. They're about them.
Right. So if anybody's ever been to a social gathering with you, none of that is surprising, right? The joke in our family is that so two daughters, we mentioned them earlier, Alexa and Taylor, adult daughters. If the four of us, when we were growing up, would go someplace, we could be riding like a short little shuttle bus to the airport, and Melissa would know the life history of the guy she sat next to and the things. So very, very social rapport ability. That doesn't surprise me at all. So that ability to make that connection and to feel the struggles they're going through, obviously, is a key to the type of counseling work you do. One of the things, so we go on a daily walk with the dog, and you're talking about the debriefing or decompression of what you felt, what you've experienced. We talk a lot about the things you see over and over again, the traumas you see, the relationship issues you see. So one of the questions I have for you is, and this will help us pivot to how your work impacts our relationship and relationships in general. Can you give me 3 things that you see as reoccurring themes sort of across your clients? And if you can focus sort of on relationship topics, that'd be great, because I know you see people who are dealing with a wide range of issues, but I think you see some commonalities or consistencies.
Absolutely. The main one is miscommunication. People miscommunicate a lot. And it's so having strong communication skills, it's something that I teach a lot of because it's for some people, it's not super easy. How do you talk to somebody, especially when you're experiencing intense emotions, anger, sadness, disappointment? It's really hard to talk to somebody. And when you're really connected to somebody, so like a significant other, it's very difficult to keep those emotions in check so that you can express yourself without being mean or without name calling, which are all, you would think, common sense wise, not productive. But in the moment, you don't always know that or feel that or be able to express yourself. So communication issues are very high up there. Second one is, I would think, respect, and especially respect for differences. So for instance, in what we're talking about with the communication style, somebody, if they get really upset, might need a moment alone to gather their thoughts, to not go into the name calling or bringing up past ancient history that is still a sore spot. things that shouldn't be included in
The moment of the
an argument
sure.
about something that happened today, you know? And so, and I've known, I hear it probably weekly where somebody says, I said I needed a minute. I tried to go to my room to take a break, to collect myself, and I was followed. This happens with parents and children. This happens with significant others. It happens between siblings, right? A lot of times people, if their desire, some people like to process things right away and they want to work it out. And then other people, they might need that time to figure out what they want to say in a productive way instead of, like I said, name calling or, so respect for differences, especially.
I'm loving this conversation because I'm sitting here processing. I'm going, ooh, which one's Melissa? Actually, I know which one Melissa is. You sometimes need a little moment to collect your thoughts and to go back at something.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting.
And it's not unusual because we're different people and couples are different people so for instance, you're pretty good at thinking on your feet and knowing what you want to say. I bet you, this is a guess, having known you for so very long, that you rarely go away from conversation thinking, oh, I wish I would have said that. Whereas that is something that's common with me. Oh, I wish I would have said,
Yeah. No, yeah. Probably a lot. Not often. I mean, of course, sometimes. Yeah. There are definitely times where I was like, oh, I could have said that better, or, oh, I should have made this point. So that definitely happens. And I think in moments of conflict, we all have that, right? It's like, oh, I could have said this better. But probably, yeah, there's people who struggle with that way more than I do. But yeah, I see what you're saying there.
Yeah. And also respect for differences in not just in communication, but like hobbies. You don't expect me to go to every sporting event that you want to go to.
Oh, I do. And I get really upset when you don't.
You do not. You just ask somebody else to go with you, or whatever, or if somebody's in a car.
So issues of respect of how you handle conflict, but just in boundaries in general. So that's so what's the third? I asked you for a list of 3.
I know. And now all of a sudden, even though you suggested that we come up with 3, now I'm blanking because those 2 are it just happens so much. And everything else kind of stems from that. Because the other one I see that has a lot is, okay, maybe another struggle that I see a lot when it comes to relationships is disproportionate division of child rearing or even work for that matter,
Inequities in the balance.
Exactly.
Interesting.
That's another one. And being willing to discuss those instead of becoming resentful, because that's what will happen. Okay, my wife's only working 10 hours a week and I wish she was working more. And then I ask, have you talked about that? Well, no, and then eventually gets to it. Oh, yeah, I'm working so hard and she's not doing, and so I think that's another one. I see where there's one parent that is the primary caregiver and sometimes the non-primary caregiver, I don't want to say helps out, but parents on a different level, and some that are just totally absent. They live there, but the baby cries and one person's doing all the changing of the diapers or doing all the baths or doing and so it's that, I guess I think you hit it, the inequity that can happen in a relationship and comes back to communication. You have to talk about it. If you're feeling that you would like more assistance in earning money and caring for the kids and doing the yard work and doing the housework, you have to say that. And a lot of people are hesitant, either because of history, either with their significant other or how they were growing up. When we learn a lot. They're called the formative years for a reason, from birth to, until we're out there, we learn a lot. And if every time you tried bringing up your feelings, you were shot down, eventually you give up, you stop, you don't even try. And so sometimes people get to the point of marriage or the relationship and they still do that because early on that wasn't respected. So I would say those are the...
Yeah. I mean, those are, I mean, I can't tell you if those are great or not. Those are the three you see. So clearly those are great. But just to recap, it was communication and struggles around communication. It was respecting how you respond to things, giving people respect, but also, claiming back your respect and how you want to treat or deal with things. And then the third was sort of how do you deal with inequities and imbalances in their relationships. And not surprising, those are all topics we'll cover. We'll talk about all those things because all of those are human issues. Those are all things we deal with, relationships with a significant other, with a child, with a parent. You mentioned all those sort of things. And I think one of the trends I see in our conversation that you didn't hit, I was curious if it was going to be in your top three, is you see a lot of people who either really are or have the perception that they're stuck, that the way that they're dealing with whatever the situation is right now is the way it will always be. And I think one of the things you talk about a lot is how you're helping them to have the confidence or skills or tools or bravery or whatever to make changes. And I think we'll talk about that a bit in our relationship and how we try not to get stuck. We try to never let something that's not right just be the way it's going to be. We're going to work on it to fix it. But that's one of the things I hear you talk about. You got a lot of people who are just stuck in what they're doing.
Absolutely. And on the extreme of that is something called learned helplessness, is if every time you try to get ahead, you've been knocked down. And it's rarely every time, but it might feel like that. Just as you're about to get ahead on the bills, the car breaks down. Or just about, that you started working out because you want to take better care of yourself, and then you get injured or you get sick. And if you get derailed a lot, you can get to the point where why even try? It's never going to change. And so you stop trying. And that's learned helplessness. And I think, maybe in certain areas of everyone's life, they have a little bit of that. A lot of times people come to counseling because they're trying to get, like you said, unstuck. They keep doing. Flip side of that too is change is hard. You might know you need to do the thing to change, to feel better, to have better relationships, to behave in a manner that you feel good about. But making those changes, especially if you've been doing something, I mentioned I work with adults now. I have adults in their 60s. They might have been having a pattern of behavior for, 30, 40, 50 years. And I think it's a good term, it's not a professional term, but stuck, that you don't know how to move past that.
Did you just throw shade on me calling that stuck as not being a professional?
No.
I think you just knowledge shamed me and you didn't want to use your jargon there.
No such thing.
You absolutely did. I heard it. That was a microaggression if I've ever heard one. There's a good term for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. We could go further into discussion of what the role of a counselor is and your day to day. And honestly, there's some awesome stories in there that probably will come out over time. But I think this is a good time to pivot to one of our reoccurring themes, which is inked moments. This is where we talk about a memory you have or I have that's related to today's topic. And since you're today's topic, let's talk about some milestones in your career. What are some big milestones you've hit in your career?
Absolutely. Well, it felt great to get the master's degree because that was the end of the formal schooling. I'm required to do quite a bit still.
Yes, continuing ed. I hear about it all the time.
Continuing ed. Yes, I do have to. But the formal schooling, I was done, and that was exciting. And then I got my first job and started using those skills. And then we had kids. And so then I took a few years off. But then getting back into it, right? And I just totally lost the question.
Career milestones.
Thank you. All right. So the master's degree.
Yep. Master's, first job.
And I got that first job before, last year, the master's degree passed the licensure exam, which you need. You don't need it to get the master's, but you need it in order to practice.
To work. Yeah.
Yeah. And so passed that in my last year, spring of my last year. And then the first job and then going back to it after taking a break, that was a big deal.
And when you went back, so your first job was the one at the boys' home? Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the boys' home, at-risk youth. And it was an inpatient.
Yeah,
treatment, right?
I worked in the day treatment. They had
You
a
worked in the
residential
day treatment,
program, but they
yes.
also had a day treatment
Yeah.
program.
So that was primarily children. When you went back, you were doing some intensive in-home care, right?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah, I did that while I was working on my license. So you get the degree, you take the exam, but then you need a certain number of hours in supervision to get the license. And the license allows you to practice independently. So in order to get the license, I had to work at agencies. So I worked for several, and once again, worked exclusively with kids. I did community counseling, so went into people's homes, learned so much from that. It's fascinating. You can see so much more.
when you
You're
see them
working
in
with
their
a child,
environment?
you're trying to figure out, like, sometimes I don't know why somebody's exhibiting a specific behavior, but then you see their sibling do something in the home or their parent or their grandparent, and you went, I get it. It's so much. I learned so much, but it was very hard. And the intensive in-home were like 2-hour sessions. I'd go into somebody's home or take them to the community, would go to a park, shoot baskets and play soccer. And we had a grand time, but they were 2-hour appointments. And that's a really long,
Sure.
if you've ever done therapy, and to be a child and do 2 hours. And those were once or twice a week. And so very intense, very intense. But my goal had always been, I wanted to be in private practice. I wanted to have my own practice where people came to me, and I was in charge of everything. And so that is where I was heading always with the agency work, with the license, was someday I want to hang my shingle out. And so that was a big deal. And I think it was 2010, I got my license. And then 2011, October 2011, I started my own practice. And it's just, the rest is history. We're going on what is that? 14 years?
Almost 15
14 years in a couple weeks.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. And then, so your private practice, in person, COVID hit, translated into remote. Now you do primarily virtual, licensed in North Carolina.
Correct.
That's sort of the button on
primarily, he means 100%.
Yes.
So yes, COVID was hard. I know it was for everybody, but especially people with mental health issues. That first year, wow, was I working a lot.
You were busy.
First year and a half, 2 years actually. And, people that had seen me in the past, but had graduated or had decided they didn't need therapy anymore, came back. I was seeing, and one of the benefits of virtual counseling or telehealth in general is fewer people cancel or don't show up. If they're not feeling well and they didn't want to drive to my apartment, they'd cancel. Or my office, they would cancel. Or they forgot about the appointment and I would reach out to them a couple minutes after the hour and they couldn't get to me in time in order to have a beneficial, because I do usually schedule back-to-back clients. So if you're late to your appointment, you get cut off at the same time. Well, and so not only did people need counseling more during the beginning of the pandemic, they also showed up more because it was easier to do so. So that was huge. And I love working from home. I have a space that's private and and the vast majority of my clients like it as well. There were a couple that have reached out in the last year and I said, I don't do in person, and they chose to go elsewhere. Totally respect it. But a lot of my people love it. And I also have a lot of people with physical health issues. Fibromyalgia.
Hard to make appointments.
Right. To get out of the house and make it, the drive and then come, take the elevator to my office. Yeah. And it was a lot.
We can debate for hours and hours and hours the pros and cons of lockdown and COVID and that sort of stuff. But I think universally, most people will say that the telehealth access has been a real positive. And we'll get into this. One of our daughters has some mobility challenges. And so the curbside pickup, the remote telehealth, there's some things that came out of that we would have gotten to eventually that we got to a lot quicker. I think access to therapy online is one of those that we would have gotten to eventually, but we got to it a lot quicker and it's been very beneficial. Yeah. Well, let's pivot to the meat of why does any of this matter when you talk relationships and long-lasting love? That is the focus of our podcast and our talk and everything. So let's pivot to that and let's talk about how counseling principles have helped you personally strengthen your relationships or just how they help people in general. So what are some of the skills you have as a counselor that are helpful in building positive relationships?
Yeah. It kind of goes back to the three things we identified that were, I will be honest, and Michael will attest to, at the end of a workday, I'm not always the best listener because I've been listening all day. And so sometimes we go on these walks. Michael hardly gets a word in edgewise. I am yammering. Because I want to be able to say things because in counseling, I don't say everything.
You listen a tremendous
I
amount.
listen a lot. I also provide a ton of, my clients like feedback. And I asked them about that in their first session. Do you want feedback or you want me to listen and validate? Both very beneficial. The vast majority of mine want at least a little bit of feedback on, okay, well, what are my options? Guy, is there something I'm doing wrong? Do you have suggestions?
Sure.
I don't tell people what to do. Occasionally I get somebody say, what should I do? I cannot answer that. So anyway, so I listen a lot. And so I get to the end of the day and I think I talk a lot. And I wonder
I will confirm you talk a lot on our walks.
And I wonder if that's exhausting for you. So that it's something I'm thinking about. So
well, it's an interesting thing. So there's this I don't know if it's a trend on social medias or if it's just so I heard this term the other day that I thought was really good. So social media is what we refer to all these platforms are, right? People sharing ideas and thoughts and everything. And I heard this new term called interest media. And it's really how the algorithms have changed to where you're not getting everything, you're getting things that you're just interested in. And it has the fine tuning. And it's sort of this new term for interest media. So I don't know how popular it is out there, but at least in my algorithms, I'm seeing a lot of comments about guys who go and see their friends or they have their work day or they do whatever the thing is and they gain pretty much no knowledge to share with their wives when they go back about how their friends' lives are doing or whatever. So so say I go to a soccer game with a buddy of mine. We watch the game for 2 hours. Maybe he just had a kid, maybe he's married, maybe all those sort of details. And for example, I would come back and he'd say, oh, how's Tim? And I would be like, Tim's good. Well, how's the baby? I have no idea. How's I don't know. I didn't ask. Well, what'd you guys do for 2 hours? We watched the game and talk. So this is the thing. And I'm not saying those are all made up. That's not an issue I have, but that's sort of the thing going on there is that men tend to not share on those sort of things or care. So it's funny you mentioned your concern that you talk a lot on those walks and that maybe, well, I think my concern on those walks is, do I not share enough? Because you ask me how my day is and I'm like, yeah, it's fine. How was work? Oh, it's good. So sometimes I try to make sure, even if you don't really care about the stuff, that I try to have stuff to tell you about, because I think that's one of the differences or imbalances between the way we communicate in those. You always have lots of stuff to talk about. And I'd say 4 out of 5 walks, I'm like, yeah, work was fine.
Right.
So I try to at least once a week tell you a little bit more about whatever's going on at work. So
Absolutely. You asked how it helped me. I went into how it kind of detracts from our relationship instead.
Well, I asked about the skills that you have, but communication skills and acknowledgement of, you went to the next thing, which the next question we're going to get to, okay. So back up then. So what are some of the skills? So obviously listening, you just hit that. Obviously communication, you just hit that. What are some of the other skills as a counselor that help in relationships?
Yeah. Oh, honestly, knowing what not to do, it's just sometimes I will have a client that says something. I was like, and they say, oh, that did not go over well. Or somebody took offense at that or whatever. I was like, and in my head I went, oh no, I just did that the other day. And so sometimes I learn
That's funny.
What not, I know that it's important to express appreciation in relationships. That's something that I hear doesn't happen all the time in other relationships. So that we are very good at, and it's something I learned in school and, positive reinforcement. I learned it in school. I see it with my clients, but for instance, actually you do this, but it's something I do as well. Oh, I'll use my example first then. You mow the lawn because I'm very much allergic to grass. You mow the lawn and I say, Michael, thanks for mowing the lawn. It looks great. Pretty much every time you do it. It's your job. Do I need to say that?
Right.
Not necessarily, but I really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
People like that. It feels good to be appreciated.
Yeah. Showing gratitude. And so, again, trying to tie this into the skills you have as a counselor. That might not be a skill, but it's definitely an observation you make. You see the relationships where they do that or where they don't do that, and showing gratitude for the things you're supposed to do. It still takes effort to do whatever those things are, right? So even though it's your job or my job or your assignment or my assignment, you should always show gratitude for it being done, right? So that's a good example. So what are some things that counselors do in their course of their profession that you struggle with when you in your own relationships? What are some things that you see in your clientele or you help your clients get better at that you are still working on personally? This is the Get to Know Melissa 101 segment. Vulnerability. Yeah. What are you going to tell that you already mentioned the over talking, but that's not really, that's a byproduct of you listen a lot. So you got to get your 10,000 words out in the day. You know that, right? There's a study that in general, women speak about 10,000 words a day. Men is much, much fewer. And so if you only spend 3,000 at work, you got 7,000 to bestow on me in the evenings. It's science. I'm not making those numbers up.
So anyway, I'm moving on. The main one that comes to mind is I teach or I help people with conflict management.
Okay.
It is not a strong, I am definitely conflict averse. It is not, I do not like arguing. It doesn't feel good.
So how do you problem solve then, or how do you affect change if you don't like conflict?
I push myself to do it.
Okay. Just face it. Yeah.
Yeah. It gets to a point, sometimes I'm quiet for a couple of days, but then eventually I practice what you preach, and you need to say something. This is something that's bothering you. You need to speak it because it will just continue to bother you. And I know that up here, but here, I get a little bit nervous when there's criticism or I'm sharing, maybe an unpopular belief and so I would say I'm not the best, but I do it anyway.
Yeah, we had an example of that just a month or two ago. We were talking some administrative changes, some regulation changes that are going on at the federal level. We'll keep it nice and generic. We won't talk about which ones or which things. And I had asked you several pointed questions about it, and you had sort of slow rolled giving your answers on those.
Yes.
And I kind of didn't let you slow roll because I wanted to hear what your answers were on those. And you eventually opened up and kind of answered the question at hand. And then I revisited it like 15 minutes after we were done with our walk and everything. Like, why did it take you so long to answer that question? I think you gave me an answer that there was something along the lines of, I knew we didn't agree on this topic. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't want to really go into it. But I don't think it was because you were worried. Well, why didn't you want to go into it? If you remember, I'm trying to think why you didn't want to go into it. Well, I think you said something about my opinion of your views on it.
Yeah, we talked about it at the beginning of the episode. You're somebody that thinks well on your feet.
Sure.
And so sometimes you ask questions that sometimes I do a lot of research these days, especially with all the false news and all of that.
We've all had to become better judges of like what's true and not.
But sometimes you ask a question, and I do a lot with feelings. I hear I'm a feeler.
Right.
And so I hear if somebody's being oppressed, or I hear that somebody was being oppressed, but I went and did the research and then found out anyway, I feel you ask questions sometimes that maybe I haven't thought through all the way, but I still feel strongly, it's not changing my opinion, but I feel, I don't know, uncomfortable, I guess, that people like to know things, right? And so when I hadn't thought about that piece of my opinion,
sure,
it kind of embarrassed, I guess, that I hadn't thought it all the way through, or I didn't have a way to articulate what it is I was feeling. I just know I feel this happened. It makes me feel bad here in my chest. And so sometimes that's enough for me to.
Yeah, so this actually is interesting because this goes back to the respect thing, right? The we process things differently, mm-hmm. You needing the time to process on those things. In my defense, it was a topic we had talked about multiple times, so you had plenty of time to go back and do some more digging on there. Yeah, it's been good. I kind of learned a little bit more about why you're slow rolling though. So conflict. That's something you struggle with that you help a lot of people with. Anything else come to mind? The laugh means something did.
Sometimes, and this was more earlier in my career, feeling too much. Like I would get embarrassed if I got teary, like even with you, while we're talking. And because I would cry when I was angry, I'd cry when I was disappointed, I'd cry when I was sad. As I've learned how to
hardened yourself.
Learned how to compartmentalize because I can't feel everything my clients feel and be good at my job. Because then all we would do was cry during the session and we wouldn't get anything done.
Right.
And then I start worrying that they're worrying that I'm crying. Oh my gosh, I made my therapist cry. No. So anyway, and so yes, I've learned to compartmentalize. I hear some terrible things in counseling, in therapy sessions, and I don't let them get to me. Sometimes though in my personal life, and sometimes I'm embarrassed if I'm crying about something that doesn't seem like it needs tears.
Sure.
The dog dies. I'm not embarrassed about crying when the dog dies.
I was about to say, I shed tears when the dog died. What are you talking about?
But sometimes, one of the only few times I've seen you cry. But sometimes, there's those, I'm like, I don't want to talk about now because I don't want to cry. And I know I'll cry and so sometimes it would be nice to be able to be detached from my feelings a little bit in my personal life, like I can do in my professional life.
Interesting.
Which is harder.
Yeah, it probably doesn't help that one of your daughters rails on you when you cry because you are pretty emotional and she's not. And so every time you cry about stuff, she sort of probably jabs you a little bit about it.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. So before we move on to our final segment, what are some of the skills or things that you see people struggling with or you observe over and over and over again that we don't struggle with that you're really thankful for? You mentioned communication. We're pretty open on that.
Yeah.
You mentioned conflict. We don't have a ton of conflict. The conflict we do have, we've sort of learned each other's patterns. We sort of know when it happens. Your signal is tears. Tears happen. I know something. We had a conflict.
We hit on something. I
tend to go quiet.
Yes.
I'd rather not say anything than something I'm going to regret. Sort of. Right. So what are some areas that I know one of the things you do often is, dang, I'm glad we do this good.
Right. Oh gosh, there's a lot of things. And I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm not.
You don't have to say that every episode.
Oh, good point. Or before I say, well, yeah, good point.
We're not perfect. We've established that.
We're not, but I have a higher appreciation for you than I think I would, that would not exist if I wasn't a counselor working with adults. Let me explain. How many times
unpack that?
How many times have I come in after work and given you a hug and you're like, what's that for? And I'm like, you're just wonderful. And it's because I've heard something where somebody didn't treat somebody well. And I realized you don't do those. You treat people very well. And sometimes you kind of lose that. It's an expectation now of you.
Sure.
That I have of you because that's just who you are. And, but sometimes it's rammed home in a workday that, wow, Michael loves his family. He's a good provider. He's caring without being, fully emotional. Right. It makes good decisions. All those things.
Yeah, he would never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think that a lot.
Right.
Of course, I don't say that to anybody because you don't kick somebody while they're down.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, your spouse is... Yeah, that your spouse is unacceptable, or my spouse would never do that. I've never said that once, in a session. But in my head, I do sometimes. And so I think that's something that I probably would not understand how huge that is, that you're good at those things. And so, and that we work at our marriage.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, it's good. It makes me sound good. So I like that. Not perfect, but good.
Right. Yeah.
No, that's good. And I think our closing segment we'll get into something about how someone can take some of these counseling skills and apply them to their relationship to help better. So with that, you want to move to our closing segment?
Sure thing.
All right. Pen to paper. So this is where we want to give you some guidance. We want to give you something to maybe work on in your relationship, something to think about, something active. And today's focus has all been about Melissa's counseling profession, the skills that she uses in her life professionally that she brings into her relationships. So we're going to continue on to that thought. So we've discussed your career as a clinical mental health counselor and how those skills give you unique insight into how people navigate relationships. Let's talk about the concept of active listening. I think this is one of the therapeutic skills. So can you start by just telling us what is active listening?
All right. Active listening is, there's actually two types of listening skills. The more basic one is active listening. That's making eye contact. That's asking a question if you want to. Really hearing a person as they speak, occasionally saying, wow, that sounds hard. One step further than that, which is what I think. So start with that, in communication, really listening to the other person, letting them say that would be great. No interruptions, right? Listening to them all the way through and then ask if they're done. And then, this is another one that comes up in counseling a lot. Asking them if they want feedback, because some people just want to vent. They don't want you to solve their problem, or maybe they just need to get off their chest that, Colleen at work, did X, Y, and Z. So that's active listening, being present, paying attention. Reflective listening is kind of a mirroring back to them what they've said to really show that you understand. And it gives the other person an opportunity to clarify, because that's where the miscommunication. I think I hear you say something, but if I don't say, so Michael, it sounds like your day at work was really rough, which is why you came home and did X, whatever it was. And that gives you the opportunity to say, no, that's not why I did it. Or, yeah, that's exactly right. And so reflective listening is a step up from active listening, which is where I think the goal should be, is to truly, active listening is about the what. And reflective listening is more about the why and the how. So it's, why are they feeling this way today? As they telling me these things, why? What's going on? And it's more advanced, I guess, is the way to say it. So I think that start with active listening, which is just being there in the moment. Do you want to talk about it more? Ask what you could do. That's active. Reflective is actually saying some of the things back to them that you heard them say, giving them the option to clarify. Really cuts down on miscommunication.
Yeah. So you said it's advanced. It's probably a ton more effective as well.
Yes. Yes. But if you really don't have the active listening,
Sure,
you're going to get the reflective wrong, because you're going to be mirroring back the wrong
right.
things. You really weren't.
You
were busy cooking dinner, and that's another thing, about
time and place.
Asking, I see you're making dinner. I want to talk to you about something. Can you listen and do that same time? No, sorry, this is a complicated recipe, whatever. Right. And that there's a better time. And that's part of it as well. Finding that out before you start a conversation. Is this a good time?
Yeah. Well, it's good. So I think our pen to paper segment is to encourage you to start by active listening. Once you've actually heard what the person said, move on to reflective listening, which is when you actually communicate back what you've heard, give your partner a chance to clarify, to enhance, to confirm, and then that will hopefully help your communication. That's a good pen to paper.
Absolutely.
Before we close, let's cycle back on a topic. You've discussed a lot about your role as a therapist. You've talked a lot about what that is, your career, how it impacts relationship. Let's talk specifically about the role of you as a counselor in this podcast. Are you giving clinical advice here?
I am definitely not. That this is you and I talking about our relationship, and yeah, there's psychological aspects to it, and it would be impossible for me not to throw in my clinical knowledge,
Sure,
in some way, shape, or form. But I am not. There is a particular area of counseling called licensed marriage and family therapist. if you are struggling in your relationship to the point that, you can't even get to active listening, maybe that's something that you seek out. And that's not my training. They take specific classes. And this is more of just you. And yes, it's informed a bit by my profession, but this is not me I'm not going to give you a list of things to do. And yes, no, that's not the point here. This is us being real, showing you that love can be long lasting and it can work for you and be a full force multiplier and all of the things that we discussed in the first
Good callbacks
couple of episodes. Thank you very much. So yes, this is not clinical advice that you are receiving on Pen and Ink.
I knew the answer to that, but we want to make sure everybody else knew the answer to that. Yeah, so we are just sharing our experience informed by your knowledge and your profession. In a future episode, we'll go into my profession and our different careers and stuff. You'll find out that my profession does not inform our relationship hardly at all. Anything else you want to share about being a counselor and all that stuff? So you hit on a few good themes throughout all that. One of the things that I've sort of taken a lot of, pride in for you is watching you really build your private practice. That was something that was very much front of your sort of goals and your vision was having a private practice. You joke a lot when we schedule vacations or we schedule plans or stuff that you don't answer to anybody. You set your own agenda, you set your own schedule. That is awesome. That's good. So that's been very fun to watch and see all that go. We've joked off and on about empathy and all those sort of differences between us. And I mentioned this, I think, in one of our first episodes. You mentioned that you sort of care for people, and I chided you for underselling that. You care tremendously about people. You spend a lot of time helping a lot of people, and you do great work. So I think one of my things that you maybe don't hear often enough is that I take a lot of pride in watching you be awesome at your job. So
sweet.
There's my nice closing moment. Well, you said something nice about me earlier in the podcast. I felt like I had to respond.
Thanks. We use a lot of joking and sarcasm in our relationship.
Does that diminish it at all that I just made a joke about it?
For some people.
Me
knowing you and our history, absolutely not.
Right.
But for people that maybe don't know us as well, they'd be like, well, that was kind of
I think that's one of the things that hopefully over the course of this podcast, you'll start to see more of our sense of humor.
Yeah.
We've been a little cautious with it in the first few because, to your point, when you've been married 30 years, together 35, we understand each other's humor. And mine is very biting and very sarcastic. And
don't worry, folks, I can handle him.
Very much so. So that's good. But no, so that's awesome. Anything else? Think we're clear?
I think we're good.
So as always, we want to thank you for joining us today. We invite you to connect with us, share your stories. If you happen to be a counselor working in relationships and any of this resonated with you, let us know. If you've got anything you want to add on to there, maybe you've been in therapy and you've practiced some of these things and you've had your relationship positively impacted. Or maybe you think therapy is a crock. I think that's out there too.
Oh,
just feel free to engage with us. Let us know your thoughts and share and help us along with this community. If you do like these episodes, this content, please give us a like, give us a thumbs up, share a review, subscribe for a future episode. I can't remember what the topic of the next episode is. We'll have to see. You'll find out with us. Thanks all.
Thank you.